Hi everyone, I'm back. It's been some time since I've made a video on the Area Shifty Bun channel by myself, but that stops today, goddammit. From now on I'm going to be doing a video a week. I've got a whole bunch of things planned, and this is the first video in a series of videos I'm calling Underdog Cinema. So what does that mean, Mike? I hear you all cry. Not really. It's going to be a series of videos about the films which I feel are really unappreciated but should be appreciated. It's the films that maybe went under the radar at the time of their release. Perhaps critically they weren't successful, or commercially, or both. And they're films that I love, that I appreciate, and I hope people will take a second look at and reevaluate. Some of those films are going to be ones which already have a cult following or have been reevaluated through home video. But many of them are going to be ones that are often panned, but I enjoy, and I think there's an arguable reason for why they are actually good films. So that's what this series is going to be about. So let's get on with the first movie review. Last night I was presented with a film that was really enjoyable. When I say presented, it sounds like I had a personal or private screening. It was on TV, and the film is The 13th Warrior. It was released in 1999. It's directed by John McTiernan, who also directed Die Hard, Predator and The Hunt for Red October. It's a film which had a really troubled production history, with two directors working simultaneously on it at one point, with John McTiernan trying to get his film together, and Michael Crichton, the writer, also claiming to have final cut on the project. Because of this and additional studio interference culminating in the film not being marketed properly or at all, because the studio felt that they didn't have much faith in the project, the film has been pushed into relative obscurity. The film follows Ahmed ibn Fadlan, who is a real-life 10th century Arabic traveller who has been sent on an obscure ambassadorial mission to the north of Europe, more so as a punishment because he was caught messing around with a nobleman's wife. On arriving to these strange shores in the untamed wilderness of northern Europe at that time, Ahmed finds himself at the mercy of a group of Norsemen who save him from an attack by Mongol raiders. While staying at the settlement of these Norsemen, a young man approaches the town and asks them for their help to fight off an evil ancient enemy which has risen in the North Kingdom of Hrothgar. A seer or oracle has prophesied that in order to be successful and to defeat this evil enemy, 13 warriors must be selected to go north and to confront this terror. It happens that one of those warriors has to be an outsider, and it's decided that Ahmed is that outsider and should be the 13th warrior. As the 13 warriors make the arduous journey north, Ahmed befriends Beowulf, the leader of the Norsemen, played by Vladimir Kulich, and Herger, an older warrior played by Dennis Storoy. On arriving at the kingdom of Hrothgar, Beowulf and his men realise that the situation is far more perilous than they first thought. They are going to have to protect the townsfolk from the evil ancient enemy known as the Wendel, a group of bear-like creatures which runs through the land, decapitating people and eating anyone who gets in their way. The 13 warriors then stand between the Wendels and the townsfolk, and it's up to them to rally the people of Hrothgar so that they can fight off this ancient enemy once and for all. Based on the book Eaters of the Dead by Michael Crichton, published in 1976, the 13th Warrior is a great example of historical fiction which manages to combine real-life characters and events with the mythical legend of Beowulf. The film was panned by critics at the time and currently has a 33% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert himself said that the reason that the film failed was because it didn't manage to make us care about the characters, that there was no real proper interaction between them. Now, I'm not saying that there are no flaws in this film. There are some errors in logic, like for example, Ahmed learns the Norse language in the course of one evening, and some pacing issues. The fact remains, to me anyway, that I think that The 13th Warrior is a really solid, enjoyable film. The cast are all excellent and put in fantastic performances. We expect this from seasoned pros like Antonio Banderas and Omar Sharif, but when we have relative unknowns like Vladimir Kulich and Dennis Staroy, they put in some fantastic performances, and they're so good that you actually realise that it's a shame the film wasn't more successful, because it does feel like Hollywood missed the boat with these guys. I love the sense of adventure in this film. You have all of these characters travelling great distances to far off lands to protect the civilians against this horrible, evil enemy. And I think the adventure in that is captured brilliantly by the score composed by Jerry Goldsmith. I always really appreciate films which blur genre lines, or films which are constructed out of the composite parts of different genres. And if you look at The 13th Warrior, I think it really has that. It has the sort of grittiness of a war film in many ways. It also manages to stay more within historical fiction without straying too much into full fantasy, which would have been very easy for it to have done. But it still has that sort of fantasy edge to it as well. And I also love the fact that we have these soldiers who are protecting this small town from this enemy, and it's very reminiscent of a lot of westerns like The Magnificent Seven, and obviously its originator Seven Samurai, films like Pale Rider. This idea of these men going to protect these people that they don't really know, that is something which I really appreciate in this film, because I love westerns, and I think there's a lot of that in this movie. Counter to what Roger Ebert said about the film lacking a way to make us care because of the character interactions, I actually think it's the characters and the performances given by the actors which really sets this film up there for me. I think that the camaraderie between all of them creates some great moments of action and adventure, and some really funny comedic moments as well. I think we have to single out the chemistry between Banderas, Coolidge and Staroy. The chemistry between those three actors is just absolutely phenomenal. They do such a great job, and it's really that chemistry that's the soul, that's the core of the movie, and that's what really makes me enjoy the film every time I watch it. It's another one of these films that I never really get bored of. Like, every time I watch it, I enjoy like I've said, the sense of adventure, but there's some great epic battles in it as well. And it's, even though it was made in 1999 and CG had well sort of taken a foothold in Hollywood by then, there's not a lot of that. It's all practical, at least it looks all practical to me. And I think that's, again, something which makes it stand out, because you don't get a lot of these epics made within the last sort of 20 years without having CG involved somewhere down the line. I think another reason to admire the film is that it really is about multiculturalism in a lot of ways. It's about how people from different cultures can come to really appreciate one another, and there's a lot of lines between the Herger character and Ahmed, where they talk about their different beliefs. Ahmed's obviously a Muslim and believes in Allah and the Prophet Muhammad, and Herger's obviously believes in Valhalla and the old sort of Norse legends where they have many gods, but there's no animosity between them. There's a lot of understanding and compassion about each other's perspective and appreciation of that as well, and also the fact that you get a really positive Muslim character in the lead, which, I mean, when do you get that in Hollywood? You don't get it. In fact, I think it's sad, because apparently a lot of the cuts that were made actually toned down the fact that the main character was Muslim. And I think that's part of what makes the film quite individual, is the fact that it's clear that the main character is Muslim, and that's a really important part of himself, and it shows him in a really positive light. And I think, sadly, due to the terrible events that happened afterwards with a few extremists, would we have had this film made just 2 years later? I doubt it would have got made, to be honest, or they would have changed the main character and his religion. John McTiernan was actually fired from the production because it went grossly over budget. I think it ended up coming in about $160 million, rumoured that that's how much it cost, when in fact it was budgeted at like $85 million. And Michael Crichton had came in, the writer, and had been shooting stuff as well. claiming that he had final cut in the film and that John McTiernan didn't. So there are a lot of people out there that claim that there is a director's cut out there, and that it's far superior to the theatrical version. We hear this a lot with films, and sometimes it's not always true. I mean, look at the Exorcist prequel. When you watch that, you realise that, you know, well, both versions were terrible in my view. Like, it didn't matter there was a director's cut, it was just two really bad films. And then other times with, like, Ridley Scott's, you know, did improve. Ridley Scott did improve Blade Runner, you know, with his director's cuts. But it would be interesting to see if there is a McTiernan cut out there. John McTiernan himself seems to say that most of his footage is in the film, but that there are some things that have been cut out. There's one trailer which I'll link down below of what's reportedly of his cut, the McTiernan cut, and it looks like it was a horror film. And I think that's really interesting, because while there are definitely horror elements in this film, and there are definitely scenes of horror, it's more about an adventure, and it does have more the vibe of like a sort of war film than anything else. But it would be interesting to see McTiernan's cut, or the footage that was cut out put back in, because some people that saw it or claim to have seen it say that the original cut is fantastic, and I would love to see it. Did I say love enough there? I should say at this point that Vladimir Kulich actually has his own website. Now, Kulich played Bullywith, and he's actually got a lot of videos about the 13th Warrior on his channel, and they're really, really worth watching, so go and check that out. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. It's great to see that the 13th Warrior now does have a cult following, but it's still nowhere near as big as I think that it should be, and there are still people out there who haven't seen it since it was originally released who still say, oh no, that wasn't a very good film. I honestly would encourage you, if you've watched the 13th Warrior once, go and watch it again, because I think it's a film which every time I watch it, it's just a blast. It's really enjoyable, and I don't really know anything else that's quite like it out there. And it's also got a really interesting production history as well, so go and read all about that, which is great. So go and watch the 13th Warrior. It's definitely an underdog of cinema. I'll be back next week with another underdog of cinema, but until then, have a debate below. If you've seen the 13th Warrior, let me know what you think of it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And also, let me know about films which you think are really underrated and should be re-evaluated, so that I can then steal your idea and then take all the credit for it. Thanks for watching. On arriving at the kingdom of on arriving at the kingdom of Hroth, on arriving at the kingdom of Hrothgar,